thing was done in chat. You don't have to like record this. But I was going to ask you, how can you debate on the proper of God being good or evil if you don't know what good or evil is? What are you even debating?
Well, we know what good and evil is in the sense where we know what things people usually classify as good. For example, people usually think that giving things to other people is good or complimenting people is good, etc., etc., etc. Right? But in regards to the full definition of good, obviously I can define that as like morally correct or like morally right or etc., 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 or things that are moral. But if overall, like the absolute overarching definition of that isn't well available, like no definition, no dictionary will give you that, no core definition will give you that, because it's just a core subjective principle at the end of the day.
Even beauty has its own definition, even though it is mind dependent. You can define something that is mind dependent. Like, you don't even understand the semantics that you are using, Boga. We can't engage in this debate without us at least agreeing on the definitions. Is there any definition that you want to use or any system and ethics that you want to use to engage in this discussion?
Well, I mean, for in regards to beauty, right? It means good looking at the most simple definition, at least. In which we're okay. Let's define good. Then we fall short again. That's what I'm trying to say. It's at the crux of something mind dependent, right? The definition ultimately will also obviously then be mind dependent on something, although generally considered based on normal categories, right? Like if you understand what I'm trying to say there.
All of these definitions that we're giving are honestly circular. Like, good is identical to being morally correct, which means being morally good, not really reaching anything. I would define being beautiful as appealing positively to the perception of a human. That's still mind dependent, although it does have an objective definition in language. So do you have any objective definition of good and evil? Or if you don't, like, this discussion would be entirely redundant.
Okay, so what exactly? Okay, so I gave a definition for good. I said morally right or morally correct or moral, for example, and you said that doesn't necessarily suffice, right? So what definition of good do you think that is out there? Unless we're of course we're just agreeing upon like standards of what is good. Like for example, if we concede to what's better for humanity as good, then like sure, obviously we can go off of that, right? But like in regards to the definition of good itself, I mean, do you have any definition other than morally correct or morally right or you know?
I don't really care about the specific definition. Like, we can define it any way you want. We can define it as anything that is good for the general of humanity. Do you think that suffices?
All right, so anything that is the most beneficial for humanity is what we define as good.
Yeah, sure.
Fine.
Okay, so if something is omnibenevolent, means it's all good, means every action it does is beneficial for humanity, and being evil would consequently be doing things that are the least beneficial for humanity. How could an entity which is all good, meaning everything it does is beneficial for humanity, do something evil, which means doing something that is least beneficial for humanity? Wouldn't that make logical contradiction?
Well, that's the thing. Your definition there was an alleged certainty that everything you do is beneficial for humanity. Something all good would mean that you're doing the most beneficial things for humanity, or rather, you're doing this to the most absolute extent, the most perfected extent, rather, right? In which, where if you are all good and all evil, right, to coincide and obviously to rationalize and obviously prove why it isn't a contradiction, right? For example, right, you can, for example, lift humanity to the highest possible level or infinite highest possible levels, right? Assuming there's infinite humans, and then kill infinite humans as well, right? In which where it's not necessarily a contradiction, right? It's just you're doing things that generally oppose each other, right? So, yeah.
Yeah. You're not really engaging with. I said specifically. I didn't say something that is beneficial for humanity, something that is most beneficial for humanity. So if you are all good, everything you will do will try to seek doing the most beneficial thing for humanity. If you do something evil, it means that you will seek to do the least beneficial thing for humanity. If you are all good, you will try doing the most beneficial thing for humanity. How could someone that is all good make something evil, which is doing the least beneficial thing for humanity? Like, it's still a contradiction, not really engaging on the contradiction.
Yeah, you keep doing this definition that just assumes that begs the question in which where everything you do, all good means everything you do is beneficial for humanity. Obviously, I
I
disagree with
didn't
that
say that. I
definition,
didn't say. I
right?
literally didn't say that. I didn't say everything you do is beneficial for humanity. I said everything you do is the most beneficial possible thing for humanity. That's what I said. It doesn't have to be
Okay, yes, that's
beneficial.
what I'm trying to say. I don't agree with, and that's begging the question.
It was your what? It was your definition.
No, right? I said that being good is defined as being is good is the most beneficial thing for humanity. I didn't say that someone who's all good is someone who only does these things. You assume that within your definition of all good.
Okay, would someone who is all good do all good?
Yeah,
Okay, so someone who is all good would do every action he does would be doing the most beneficial thing for humanity, analytically.
no.
What do you mean no? That's what we reached via your agreement.
No, you simply just assume that, like this, as a brute premise for no reason. Yeah, I agree. Obviously, if someone who's all good, right, they're doing all beneficial things for humanity, or doing this to the most perfected extent, right?
Yeah.
However, though, saying that everything that they're doing is where we then fall short in regards to what is assumed. You just kind of assume that part.
I didn't assume anything. Like you just agreed with me on my idea, my core idea. Someone who is all good, the actions of someone who is all good will try to seek the most beneficial thing for humanity.
Correct.
Yeah, correct. And something evil would be the least beneficial thing for humanity. Do you agree?
Correct.
Okay, so someone who's all good wouldn't do something evil, which is doing the least beneficial thing for humanity. Like it goes against its essential properties.
That is where I disagree.
Why?
What do you mean? Why? You just all you did is just like you just all you did was non sequitur, right? Like you said, okay, obviously being evil is the least beneficial thing for humanity, and being good is the most beneficial thing for humanity. And then you want to say, okay, so then someone who's all good wouldn't do anything evil because it's least beneficial for humanity, right? In which that I would say is non sequitur, right? And I can't necessarily prove why because it's a negative claim, but what I can do is explain how in ways in which where it's right? Like for example, someone can like what do I say this, right? Yeah, just doing like, someone who's all good, for example, is the most perfected way of being beneficial for humanity, right? So we
Yeah,
assume that he's doing all good moral things, right? Which would be
yeah,
the definition of all good. He does all moral things, right? And
yeah.
then someone who's all evil, right, who does all immoral things, or tries to do everything to try and stop humanity from going, right? You can still do both at the same time. There's no contradiction in doing that. If you have both thoughts in your head and you have the intention to do both, you can still do that. They don't necessarily contradict each other. Do they oppose each other? Yes, obviously it is the case where, obviously one would be kind of hindering your other thing. But the point is, though, is that you can still attempt to do both at the same time to your greatest extent.
Yeah, if you do both, you wouldn't be all good or all evil, you'd just be neutral.
I mean, by some definitions, well, that would be true neutral, right? But if you do both all good and all evil, it still would be like you still would be all good because by like brute contingency, right? And God being omnipresent, I believe, contains all good and all evil within Himself, just by a brute
I
contingency.
didn't
Like
talk
that's my
about
main
God
thing about.
at all, Google. I didn't talk about God at all. I'm just saying, if someone is all good and does something evil, would they still be all good?
Yes,
Why?
because you assumed that it was the case in the first place, which obviously means that he achieved goodness into the maximally possible extent, right? And if he can commits evil on top of that, right, then it doesn't necessarily take away that he still committed good for the maximally possible extent. It doesn't contradict that.
Yeah, exactly. He did commit good to the possible extent, to the most possible extent. So he was all good. But when he did something that is not the most beneficial thing for humanity, he stopped being all good. If you are all good, you would do the most beneficial things for humanity. If you break that law, you wouldn't be all good. Like I can
But
wait.
no. We didn't assume that he broke that law, right? If you can still do the most beneficial things for humanity while still doing something that's hindering towards humanity, right? Like as I said, you just said before, he already does everything all good maximally possible and continues to do so, and then does evil on the side. That doesn't necessarily contradict it or even stop the law at all. He's still doing things to the maximally possible goodness. He's just doing evil on top of that. That's what I'm trying to say. There's no contradiction here. It's just people doing two things.
Yeah. So what would you define someone neutral as?
Someone neutral, someone who's both good or evil, or neither good or evil. Well, actually, no. The base definition of neutral would be neither good nor evil. True neutral is pure good and pure evil.
Yeah, exactly. So check the syllogism I send in chat. If someone is all good, all your actions will be the most beneficial things for humanity. You don't do the most beneficial thing for humanity when you get the chance. You're not all good. What would you reject here?
Well, okay, so yeah, if you don't, okay, so let me just okay. So where's the syllogism you sent in chat? Where's this? Oh, general. Oh, you mean the VC chat? Okay, let me
This
see. Let me
chat.
see here. If someone is all good, all your actions will be the most. Okay, see, no, that's the premise I disagree with. All your actions would be the most beneficial things for humanity is the premise I disagree with. Right? I'm saying if someone is all good, right, your actions would be the maximally possible good or maximally possible extent for being good. Right? As in your actions would encompass all the good, all the most beneficial things for humanity. Not necessarily all your actions will encompass that thing. Right?
Like you just said P and then not P. That's what you literally said.
No, I made a very clear distinction. Someone who is all good is someone who does good or beneficial benefits to humanity to the maximally possible extent, not someone who only does good to the maximally possible extent. That's the one thing that you keep adding that I we just never agreed to. You just add that out of no reason.
Common sense. How can you be all good if you're doing something evil? How can you be all good? All means in your entirety, in your totality. How could your entire totality be all good if you do something evil? Like there's evil inside you. How could you be all good? Like you would be partially good, partially evil. That's where your
Well,
point
yes,
fails.
you would be partially good and partially evil. I'm not defining all as in, oh, hey, right, you are 100% good as opposed to evil, right? You can still have 100% total goodness and 100% total evil within you, right? In which where both of them encompass the both absolutism of both, right? And you're just the encompassing of those two things, right?
Okay,
However, though,
I'll
right?
give you a dilemma. Okay, go on, go on.
Yeah, like I think the best analogy for this is any verse in fiction, for example, that has has embodiments of both good and evil. That verse would be both all good and all evil. It contains every single good embodiment of good and every single embodiment of evil, right? It is both an all good and all evil act or all evil container. Right. And yes, it would have to contain consciousness because assuming these things exist, consciousness must also exist right? So yeah, basically Marvel, for example, if we go to the abstracts, right? The Marvel is all good and all evil within that verse, right? It would be the same thing from anything else.
Okay, so I will give you a dilemma to illustrate how wrong you are. So you're a person who is 100% good and 100% evil, and you go on your way and you find some kid drowning. You can either do the most beneficial thing for this kid, which is save him, or the least beneficial thing for this kid, which is drown him even more. What would this all good and all evil person do?
What would he do? Well, I mean, you can, assuming there's infinite timelines, you can save the kid in one timeline and drown the kid in another timeline, but that's simply one possibility. There's many other possibilities you can rationalize this.
You live in. There's only one timeline that this happens. Don't escape the other timelines. Some guy who is all evil and all good finds a kid drowning. Does he save him or drown him?
Does he save him or drown him? Well, given we're saying that what is the most beneficial for humanity, let's assume the kid is like, I don't know, killing all of his parents or something.
We
Then
don't
most
assume that.
likely.
We don't assume that. We don't assume that. We don't assume that. Answer the question.
Well, I mean, that's kind of the problem. Like, it kind of assumes that saving this particular kid is a good thing in the first place. But even via our definition, that would be still subjective. Like, our definition of good is what's the most beneficial for humanity, right? But we have no context on who this kid is, how much of a benefit is he to society, for example. If this kid is like the only human left, if he is the only human left, for example, then obviously this all good, all evil person being balanced in this case would obviously save this kid. But you understand what I'm trying to say? Like it depends on, um, the standards we're actually going on off of here.
Okay, so since your comprehension is stuck on the semantics, I will give you my literal like core point here. If someone is all good and all evil simultaneously, and they are met to the decision where they can do the most beneficial thing for humanity or the least beneficial thing for humanity, what do they do?
Well, both, if possible. If not possible, then obviously they would do whatever is possible. It's simple.
Yeah, either is possible.
Well, if either is possible, then yeah, then they'll just do both. Simple.
Either is possible, as in you can do only one.
Well, if only one is possible, then it would do the other one. That would do that one. Like you see what I'm trying to say here? Like it's just all tautological, and that's why I say God is all good and all evil. Like he's just a brute contingency, right? In which where everything is
And
blessed upon, right? And that includes good and evil.
good thing that you can either do the most beneficial thing or the least beneficial thing. What would they choose?
Again, if it's possible to do both, then they do that. If it is
No,
impossible to do both, then the one that's possible, they do that. If the one that's impossible to do that, like you see what I'm trying to say.
I don't see what that. It's only possible to do one of them, one of the options.
Okay, then just do the one that's possible. It's simple.
Both are possible, but you can only do one. It's possible to only do one of the two.
Exactly. So do the one that's possible. I don't see the problem.
Both are possible, you fucking dumb fuck. Oh my, I'm sorry, I'm sorry. Both are possible, but you can only do one.
Both are possible, but can only do one.
Like
Right? Well, then,
you can
okay,
only
if you
do
can only do one, then do that one. There you go. If you can only do one, do that one. Like, I don't see your point.
which one? I meant it's possible to only do one. Like you have two options. It's only possible to do one.
Okay, do that one. I don't see like what you're trying to say here.
I didn't specify which one you can do. They can either choose option one or two, not both,
Yeah,
only one.
yeah, you didn't. Yeah, you didn't specify which one you can do here. But the one that you're saying you can do, if we assume it's either good or assume it's either bad, then it would just do that one.
What? Bro, imagine this scenario. You go to the ice cream guy and you tell him, and he tells you, you can only get one ice cream, chocolate or vanilla. You can only choose either chocolate or vanilla. You can choose both, and you can choose like neither. You have only if you choose neither, you are neutral. If you choose, you can choose both. If you are all good, you choose the most beneficial thing for humanity. If you are only all evil, you choose the least beneficial thing for humanity. If you are both, what do you choose?
I mean, okay, I mean, under that scenario, it can really be either because, like, at the end of the day, if you're assuming that there's no other possible way to reconcile this, then the being like choosing the most slash least beneficial thing can just choose one over the other. It doesn't necessarily contradict it if they are the absolutist of both ends, right?
Yeah, so if you choose neither, you are neutral. If you choose the most beneficial thing for humanity, you are all loving, are all good. If you choose the least beneficial thing for humanity, you are all evil. By the process of elimination, there is no choice where the character ends up being both all evil and all good. Those are two contradictory.
Yes, you see, that's the thing. They still would be all evil and all good. Just because they did one particular choice in which where it's not possible to do both at the same time doesn't necessarily mean they're not all evil and all good in regards to their being within themselves, the definition within themselves or their core principle. That's what I'm trying to say. You gave a scenario in which where it's not possible to do both. So in which case, obviously, in which where you said you can only do one out of the either, right? Then obviously it's a case where it would just be a random sort of thing, right? Based on this being, since they're both absolutes on both sides, right? You just gave a scenario and molded it into the case where the being has no other choice, right? And obviously they would be excited to choose either. So it's really just random chance. Like you see what I'm trying to say here.
I don't see what you're trying to say. If you randomly, okay, I think this is what you're getting at. If you randomly choose a choice of the two options, you're not really an agent. Don't think of your choice. Just a machine randomly choosing things. You're not neither evil or good because you don't do things with malicious intent. You don't have intentionality. You don't have intentions by their actions. Just do things randomly. There are only three options here. You choose the most beneficial thing, which is the thing that the all good being will do. You choose the least beneficial thing, which is the like all evil thing will do. You choose neither, which is the neutral being. Like that's what the neutral being would do. You can't choose both because that's logically contradictory. You can't save the child and not save the child. You can't save and not save someone. So you have to choose one or choose neither.
See,
What
in the
would
analogy
all
you
evil
give,
and all good being do in this scenario? I just
in
want to
this,
imagine
okay,
what people do.
in the analogy you gave, an omnipresent being would be an omnipotent being would be able to just do would save the child, right? And then just recreate the timeline to then like not save the child and then do that over and over again, right? But like if that's what I'm trying to say here. But if you're trying to give a case in which where that's not possible, even though the being is like omnipotent in this sense, right? We're just going to take that attribute out of them, right? Then again, it's just going to be random. That's not necessarily saying that they don't have intentions or that they're not they're a machine, for example. It's just that if you code them to do this thing, to do A and then to do B, right? They both oppose each other, right? And then you give them a case in which they have to either do A and or B. What happens? It's a random pick, or the code just crashes because it doesn't necessarily like fold in their system anyway. Because you just made a universe where this being can't function. That's what I'm trying to say here.
Yeah, so
Buga, shut your bitch up.
Booga, so the decision will be made randomly, and there will be no intentions behind the decision, and there will be no thoughts behind that decision, and that being wouldn't even have consciousness to begin with. Which is like a necessity to have evil and good. So basically, we are saying this being will be as conscious as a rock, and the rock is neutral. So at the end of the day, your definition of something that is all good and all evil is something that is basically neutral, and that's still not good and not evil, because something like not conscious or does actions randomly wouldn't have good or evil in them. And I never
Let me go
said that
back to the.
something character
Go ahead.
here is omnipotent. Like, why are you talking about something omnipotent or omniscient or omnipresent? Like, that's entirely beside the point.
Okay, let's go to back to my Marvel analogy, right? We
What?
have both the embodiment of evil. Actually, no, let's go to any verse, right? Actually, no, yeah, a good analogy is Demon King Piccolo and Kami, right?
Don't.
Demon King Piccolo is the embodiment of good, as stated in the
Book,
RPG guidebook, right?
book. I didn't watch that. Don't just talk normally. Don't get some analogy from something I didn't see or watch. Just talk normally.
Okay, what I'm trying to say is you have a fictional verse, right? You have someone who encompasses all good and all evil. That verse would still be conscious via containing both of those things which require consciousness to exist. And it would be perfectly all good and all evil. It contains an embodiment and pure perfection of good, and it contains an embodiment and pure perfection of evil, right? This verse would still have consciousness, right? Would still have good, would still have evil, right? And would still be able to have intentionality to do these things, right? These things and the subsets of these, and the subset of this universe, right, are both going out of their way to do the both at their most, their highest extent, right? That's what I'm trying to say here. There's no necessarily contradiction within here, right? If you just make a universe in which where the universe, this particular verse has to choose one being that exists, well then okay, frick, you just annihilated the universe where this being can exist. Like that's what I'm trying to say here. The verse would still be a being by definition.
You didn't annihilate anything. If good is described to be the doing the most beneficial thing for humanity, and evil is described to be doing the least beneficial thing for humanity, and you both are good and evil, it will mean that every decision you make will force you to choose both the most and least beneficial thing for humanity simultaneously, which would lead into a logical contradiction.
Well, no, actually, because if you have a verse, right, in which where you have one person who embodies all good,
What?
one person who embodies all
This is
evil,
reality.
right, said verse.
This is reality, brother. This is reality. Stop
Yeah,
talking
okay,
about God.
let's assume this is reality then. Okay, let's assume this is reality then. Say we have a
Okay.
person who is all good. Say we have a person who is all evil. That's not a contradiction, right? Okay, fine. So this reality would be both all good and all evil with consciousness within it. That's what I'm trying to tell you. Just tautologically speaking.
This reality, like the reality would be like it will encompass both people.
Yes.
So a part of the reality would be all evil, and a part of it will be all good.
Correct.
Yeah, and those two persons are distinct.
Correct. There we go. That's how you reconcile the quote unquote contradiction you have. That's what I believe God is. Right? Obviously, when God is all good and all evil, God isn't like only good as in the sense in which where good is the only thing that exists within God, because God contains chairs, God contains phones, he contains humans, right? So he can't only contain good, right? And he can't only contain evil. He contains both the perfections of both things, but also other things, right? Obviously, all good and all evil would be distinct from each other in the sense, but they can still coexist within one being God.
Okay, I'm kind of like traumatized right now. Like, first and foremost, God would be like a distinct agent. God wouldn't have people inside of him, and the reality isn't conscious. Reality isn't its own agent, so it can't be all good or all evil or good or evil
What
at
do you
all. I
mean
don't.
reality isn't its own agent? By that logic, humans aren't its own agent. Humans contain a brain, but they're not the entirety of the brain, and so therefore, like humans aren't their own agent either. They have a stupid argument.
Humans
It
contain
still
a
has
brain, but
consciousness.
not the brain. What do you mean people contain a brain, but not the entirety of a brain?
They contain the entirety of a brain, such as the universe contains the entirety of all brains. So yes, the universe would still be conscious, right? Obviously, the brain is not the entire human, right? The same way the brains aren't the entire universe. That's what I'm trying to say.
The universe, by definition, is a mass of things. Like, it's a group of things.
Correct. So is a human, a group of things,
Okay,
including consciousness.
so the universe wouldn't be all good because it has multiple things that aren't good. So it wouldn't be all good, and it won't be all evil because it has multiple things that aren't evil. Like, some part of it would
Oh,
be all good, which is good. Some part would be evil. I said you can have someone who is both good and evil, but I said that you can't have someone who is both all good and all evil. Like, if a universe was all good, it will have no evil. Like, it will be filled with all good people. It will be the mass of multiple good people. Like, what are you even saying?
and this is where you get back into begging the question or alleged certainty. You
What?
assume again that a universe that is all good must contain no evil. Whereas my definition of all good is containing perfect good or all possible good that exists, right? And
That's
obviously, if
linguistically
you
wrong.
contain all good that exists within the universe and you contain all evil that exists, right, that could possibly exist, right? The most perfect forms of both things. You are both all good and all evil by definition.
No,
There can't be any more good
it's
than
not.
that, and there can't
No,
be any more evil than that.
wrong. That is linguistically wrong. If you were all good, you would have no evil parts, or
Yeah,
even
that's
no.
the, that's what that's the definition you keep begging. You keep begging that definition. I keep disagreeing with you, right? In which where you don't understand that. That's like begging the question.
Okay. What's the linguistic meaning of the word all?
All means well the entirety of. So you
Yes.
contain the
Okay.
if a universe contains everything, it contains
No,
the
no, no,
entirety of
no,
good
no, no.
as
I
well as
don't
the
want to
entirety
hear.
of
I
evil.
don't want to hear an analogy. I just want to hear the definition. You said all means the entirety of. So if someone is all good, their entirety is good.
No.
What do you mean? No, this is your definitions. This is
No,
your
my
word.
definition. No, my definition is all. If someone is all good, right? This means that they are the entirety of good, as in they have the entirety of good as an attribute, right? And obviously, if this person contains everything, for example, they could also have the entirety of evil as the attribute.
Yeah, so you can't have two people that are good because one of them will be all good, meaning they will have the entirety of good. Like, the entirety of good in the universe will be inside of them. So you can't have other good people, which is obviously wrong. Like, obviously wrong, but this doesn't make any sense. You said if you are all good, the word all means entirety. So someone who is all good means that they are all the entirety of them is good. That's like saying
No, that's
something
not what it
all
means.
if something
No,
is all
false.
red, it doesn't mean that it has the entire red in the universe. It only means that the entire thing is red. Do you understand the point that I'm making?
Okay. So what I'm trying to tell you is that those are two definitions of all good. Obviously, if you think the definition of all good is simply just a human who only has good within them, well, first off, that's a logical contradiction, by the way, because you can't because then like if they have good inside of them, how could they have cells? How could they have blood? Those are different. from good. So obviously that's not even a
What?
possible thing to exist, right? For example, a God that is all good yet has love as well. Love is not necessarily part of good. Therefore, it's not the same thing. Like an object, for example, or power. Power is not good, right? These are different things. So if we're trying to think of a God that has power and is all good by your definition, as in they only contain good, right? Yeah, that's not possible, right? So, right, and if we're talking about a God that has all good, they have the attribute of goodness that is perfect, right? And the same way, let's say a God is all evil, right? They have an attribute of evil that is perfect, right? Obviously, these two attributes don't encompass the entirety of their being. However, though, right, they can still have other attributes on top of these things.
Yeah, no one said they can. I'm just saying those attributes can't contradict the other attributes of good and evil.
And they don't.
Yeah, exactly. So anyway, you've wasted my time. I think we can conclude, and I think Axiom can judge.
I don't agree to any judge. I think my point is made clear.
Bro.
Yeah, sure,
Good
I
debate.
can make a poll. I can make a poll. Axiom, you can just make verdict and send it. Like you
Yeah,
don't
yeah.
have his permission.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
don't
sure.
agree
Can you
to
guys,
him as a
yeah, yeah,
judge, so
yeah.
that's like
Can
a
you guys
nonsense
like,
verdict.
bro, nigga, booga, if you have like any disagreements with my verdict, you're free to discuss me all you want and shit. I'm just gonna
I
say
don't
like,
have to. It's just a random dude to saying his opinion. Like what the frick?
I
um,
value his opinion. I give my
yeah,
testimony that his opinion matters, and Daud does too.
yeah,
Okay,
sure.
that's
So
you.
yeah,
You think his
yeah,
opinion
sure.
matters. That's not me.
Yeah, yeah. You thinking that his opinion doesn't matter doesn't mean that his opinion doesn't matter. It's just a you problem.
What do you mean? Just a
Also,
you me
booga,
problem? Can you prove his opinion matters in this debate? Like subjective opinion? Like, dude, like would a 4-year-old like just like watching this debate be like, Amin win?
Wait, 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 wait. Did you just say that a 4-year-old can consent? Why can't we take the opinion of a 4-year-old?
What I mean is the average 4-year-old's level of intelligence. But regardless, though, what I'm trying to say is like a random person, right? Just like watching
bro,
this debate is not reliable.
yo, low key, booga, you literally said in my prime, I'm the top 3 best debater in your opinion. Why would you not accept my opinion?
Yeah,